welcome to Exposure Therapy. No, welcome to the Exposure Therapy podcast. This is episode 7. My name is Tom Bradley, and we have
Eric Smith.
Why do I do that every single time? I don't know. It feels very kind of hosty.
Like you could just say my name. That I'm good with that. I don't need to say my name.
I just like you to feel included. I just want to make it an interactive process. Getting into.
No, I appreciate that. It's funny that you said the Exposure Therapy podcast. Like, there's a lot of like bands that I listen to that like I never knew they had a "the" in front of them, or there were bands that like I just placed a "the" in front of, and it's like like the Pixies. It's not the Pixies. It's just Pixies.
But, yeah. It's the what is it? The whole kind of is it the Mandela effect or something?
It's got to be yeah. Where you like had like that
Berenstain Bears shirt. Or Berenstain Bears.
Yeah. I think it was always Berenstain Bears for me. I love those books. I love the cautionary tales in them. That and Curious George. I feel like I should have.
I never read the Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears. But also to that point, it's completely undecided whether it is the Exposure Therapy podcast or just Exposure Therapy. It's titled Exposure Therapy, but I always call it the Exposure Therapy podcast. So maybe that's probably a convention that we should establish before we continue with any future episodes.
I think we should just keep it the same and just like gaslight everybody for the remainder of the podcast. Just create our own Mandela effect. Yeah,
that's the way to do it. But this episode, we have a special guest with us, Mike Chudley, who is a street photographer from the UK, and we're going to talk to him. He's actually waiting in the waiting room right now, so I'm excited to chat with him. And we're going to talk about his street photography, his experiences photographing in places like London, Brighton, Cleethorpes, my neck of the woods as well. I think he's taken photos in where I grew up. So I'm excited to chat with him about his inspirations and motivation. And I guess we'll just let him in and go for it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Mike, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I'll just give you a heads up. We're already recording because Eric and I have already been chatting. But I appreciate you taking the time, especially in the evening, to do this. Where are you based? I know you're in the UK, but whereabouts?
I'm in Essex. Yeah,
you're in Essex. Whereabouts in Essex? I'm from Essex.
I was about to ask you where's your British accent from specifically, but Chelmsford.
Yeah, I grew up in Colchester.
It's not a million miles away. I moved down to Essex about 7 years ago.
Okay,
I'm originally from Lincolnshire. Yeah, Lincolnshire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got friends in Lincoln. It's I've seen every now and again. I've seen a couple of posts that you've had on Instagram. I've seen like Chelmsford.
Yeah.
How big is Essex? I'm from the States. I've never been.
Yeah, you're from California. It's not even the same.
Yeah, it's one of the home counties, so it's quite out of every. There's like 5 places in the UK that matter, and I would say that Essex has a pretty good influence on the rest of the South. Yeah. It's not important, but it's more important than other places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Essex is kind of is one of those through counties for like people that work in London. They'll probably live in Essex and commute in. That's what my family did. But yeah, it's nice. It's near the water.
I moved down here from Lincolnshire because Lincolnshire was so boring, and I was like, as soon as I started taking photography and video seriously, I just had to move somewhere where there was more than 7 people. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna move down south.
Yeah. No, Essex is nice, and Colchester recently got city status. So
Southend did as well.
Did it?
Yeah,
Southend. That's cool. But I haven't been back in a very long time. Where
do you live now? Okay.
I live in Toronto.
I assumed so. From your posts and stuff.
Yeah. I've been in Toronto for 8 years now. So I grew up in Colchester, moved up north for college. So I moved near Newcastle. And then my wife and I moved here in 2016. So we moved here. Why? Because we just wanted a change. I think that I had the same impression. Well, yeah, very much a change. So like we lived in a small town called Darlington, which is a very, very small town, like 50,000 people. And there wasn't really anything there as like, you know, career wise, you kind of hit your ceiling pretty quickly. And we were just a bit unhappy with our surroundings. And we just kind of picked Canada. We'd never been. We'd never even like been to this side.
That's great.
We were like, let's give it a shot. So we sold everything, packed 2 suitcases and our pets, and we shipped it across the Atlantic to Canada. Wow. So yeah, I
never knew here. That. Yeah.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know that you just packed 2 suitcases and your pet and just, you know, jumped on a plane.
Yeah, you'd not been beforehand.
What an adventure. Wild. Yeah.
The bang lot, yeah. We upped sticks and we committed full on. We were like, well, we're going to see if this is permanent. Thankfully, it was, because otherwise it would have been a nightmare trying to get back. But yeah, we've been here 8 years. How's things? How is your photography journey? You've been traveling quite a bit, I see, lately.
Yeah, I feel like I'm busier than ever, but I mean, no way can I complain about that. So yeah, I'm great. Yeah, things are good. I have been traveling a lot, but in one way, I kind of like a routine. I don't want to be on the road all the time. I actually think it's unhealthy to be doing too much. Yeah. So I'm conscious of that, but it's all photography and video related. So yeah, I can't complain.
And you were recently over this side of the Atlantic. You were in New York as well, right?
That was a dream spot that was to tick off the bucket list. I'll be back for sure.
How did that come about? Was it just kind of like a trip that you decided to take with some friends and just kind of...
Yeah, a group of London street photographers. We all kind of like talked about it briefly last year at some point, and then obviously it doesn't take much for a street photographer to actually want to go to shoot in New York. So there was like 6 of us that all agreed, yeah, let's just do it. We picked a date, booked it in advance. But after that, I think a few of us are thinking that we might try and do it every year because that's just so sick.
That's crazy. Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people who've kind of done that trip from different parts of the world. And one thing that is consistent with everyone's, review of New York as a street photography kind of spot is that it's overwhelming on the senses. It's great, but you don't even scratch the surface when you actually land. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, it's like TikTok in real life. It's like it's you know when you scroll on TikTok and every 3 seconds something crazy hits your face. Yeah, every block something is like, what? Like. When I first got there, this was random, someone dropped a packet of like a bulk buy cigarettes. There's like 20 packs of cigarettes. Someone dropped all of them, and then 3 people just started like helping themselves, and then just scattered all over the floor. And then someone went past on a bike with 2 people on a bike. One person had no trousers on, but they had pants on. You call them pants in American, but they had trousers and boxers on, and they were on backwards while the person riding the bike was facing forwards. And then what else happened next? Oh, then a dragonfly, if that's right, like a crazy insect like this big, just landed on this guy's shoulder next to me. All within about 10 minutes, this all happened, and I was like, how? I didn't know if it's because I was like super engaged, that I just arrived in New York and I'm like really active, like looking for things. But it's after that, I was like, okay, I need to just take a minute and sit down. Like,
I was going to say the introvert in me would be like, that's enough for one day. I'm going back. I'm going to go and sit at the hotel for the day.
One of my friends arrived as well, and he saw someone bike past with a car tire on their head. They were balancing it on their head. And he got the picture as well. And I was like, he was just like, what the hell's going on over here? I was like, I don't know. I think this is normal.
I think I know, I'm not the photographer, but the person with the car tire on the head, I think I know who you're on about, because I've seen numerous photos from different photographers in and around the Washington Square Park area of this particular guy. They photographed him. And he just
it is that guy, I think. Yeah, I think it is that guy. Yeah.
That's his thing. It's just the tire. Yeah.
Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I just ride around with a car tire on my
I'm
head.
really good at balancing car tires on my head. Nice.
I like that that's accepted there. Like that's commonplace. You know, if you did something like that in Lodi where I live, like they'd run you out of town. It's just
Eric, I don't know whether it's accepted. It's just happening.
yeah, that's wild.
So yeah, I kind of skipped over one of the first things that I normally ask. Obviously, you said that you are from you live in Chelmsford. You do a lot of photography in London. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the type of street photography you do and kind of what brought you to this point in your career?
I would like to hear you describe what you think my type of street photography is, and then I will correct you if I disagree.
Oh, he deflected. See, this is the thing. Like, it's difficult to really describe without actually just sounding a little bit cliche. But
that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to say the cliche words.
So you're just going to let me do it instead. That's fine.
Yeah. Now agree or disagree.
So why don't we both do it then, Eric? I'll go first, and then we'll kind of we'll see whether your opinion differs. So, like, I followed you for quite a while, Mike, and I think that your photography style is kind of, as everyone's does, has evolved over the past few years. And one of the first things that I really that struck me, maybe like 2021, 2022 was you had a big focus for like composition and color matching. And there was a number of images that you would have that it would be, there's one that I remember where there was like a billboard with swirls and there was a woman with gray hair that walked past perfectly in the center of it. You did a lot of color matching with people wearing the same color clothes and stuff, like, you know, with window displays, stuff like that. So I think a lot of it was styled compositions. And I think that now you've kind of entered an exploration era. So I think that one of the constants that I've always found with your photography is people. There's always people is your kind of favorite subject, but I think that now you've been doing a lot of documentation and exploration of kind of, you know, people in different areas. There's still a lot of composition involved. I do like you know, kind of certain subframing or hiding of subjects behind others, which sometimes it baffles me. There's some instances that I've seen images with you and I just think like, you must just walk around with a camera to your eye and not put it down. Because like, how else do you get these moments? But yeah, I think that currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, documentation and exploring is your kind of.
I love that. Yeah.
You
pretty much nailed it. I can explain a little bit more of the reasoning behind that, but that was, I would agree in some ways. Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Eric? How would you describe it?
So I don't come from a street background, but
that might be better because then you don't get caught up in the nuances of it. You can just be like upfront about what you see.
Yeah, it'll probably be brief, but I mean the photo that Tom mentioned about the old lady with the swirls, like that is like an indelible image that like is stuck with me. And also there's like a few that just sort of feel timeless. Like when I look at the images, I'm like, this is something that's been around for like a long time. Like I definitely get like a 60s and 70s vibe from some of the photos. It just kind of feels like, you know, I'm back there, like I'm flipping through a Time magazine and I see it, which is really cool. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, timeless is kind of the word that stays with me.
I like that. I think back to what you said about earlier in like maybe 2021 or 2022, I was more color matching and compositionally focused. Now looking back, probably between the years of 2020 and now, I've been like, go with street photography. And before COVID, I was kind of just did some photography in the city. You might call it street photography, whatever, but it wasn't really like people focused or anything. It was just a guy with a camera in the city kind of thing. Especially in COVID, I had a lot of time to research street photography and look into it a bit more. And I watched all the documentaries and bought some books, and that's where things like started to get a bit more serious. And then I feel like the photos you described, like the lady in front of the spirals, I was going through a phase of gamifying the entire thing where you're actually just in many ways, anyone could take those photographs specifically, because it's like, okay, how many primary colors can we find? What composition looks nice? I wasn't reacting to moments. I was in many ways just waiting for them to happen, but I already knew that they would happen. And this might sound weird, but they're actually not complex photographs to take. They're just, you have to just look for them. And I feel like that took me like 2 years of gamifying the process of, okay, let's find 3 matching gestures, or let's find 4 things that are red, or this billboard looks good, let's wait for the perfect subject. Like, they're not, I don't think they're, I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't think they're creative. I think they're just like puzzle pieces, and you're putting them together in the streets.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Then by doing that, I actually learned a hell of a lot about what I actually find interesting. Now, the process of gamifying street photography and ticking all these boxes, having layers, making sure the light's good, find the right composition, make sure the color's nice, like ticking all these boxes is great, but because it's so hard to do as well, like off the bat, it takes months and months and practice, and it takes some thinking. But reflecting on that, I'm pleased I went through it, because now I know what actually interests me afterwards. When I look at the photographs I've taken that I do like, they are more so than, oh yeah, there's 3 people with matching hats. Like, that doesn't really interest me anymore. I always find myself thinking, like, so what? It's just a thing that happened and I was there to catch it. Cool. And that's still fun. That's still good. There's still a reason to go and do that. Like, it's a reason to head outside and shoot. And I think that's all you need. But certainly this year, and maybe like the back end of last year, I started to think about more, what do I feel from these photographs? And the photographs where I'm more reacting to random little moments, or I'm noticing things that aren't so much a game, they're just real moments that I find interesting. It's hard to describe because I'm not like past this phase, so I don't know entirely what I'm looking for, but I'm way more interested in things that resonate, and less so about, oh, let's gamify this scene here. Because I feel like anyone could play the game of street photography, ticking the right boxes. And I think it's a good game to play. I think it's fun. I think it's really fun. But now, so when I go out, I'm not looking for that game. I'm just looking for things that are interesting.
Is there a sort of horse trading that goes on where you're transitioning from waiting for a shot versus like reacting? Because I know, like, when I see something, I'm like, oh, that'll be a really cool picture. Like, sometimes I want to capture that moment, but I lose composition, I lose layering. Like, so I'd imagine that's like more difficult to react. Like, how has your process changed in doing that?
I think you don't know until you're presented with it. So I can't tell you right now what I'm thinking. But when I walk down Oxford Street and a moment presents itself, whether it be me reacting to something or I see an opportunity to wait for a perfect composition, I'll just feel it out there and then. I think it's hard to give you a certain answer on what I'm thinking before I go out. Some days differ to other days. Some days you're in the mood to just stand there for an hour and see what happens. Other days I don't stop moving. But it's certainly the photographs are certainly less predictable. I think now they're the less predictable the image. I think the more spontaneous it is, the more fun I seem to have, either taking it there and then, or even looking back at the image afterwards and thinking, oh, like, I'm well pleased I caught that. That's sick. Whereas if I just see a nice bit of light, sometimes, and that's good enough as well, by the way, but sometimes I think, yeah, but someone else could take that photograph. Like, everyone here can see that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But then also you could get caught up in thinking about it too much. Sometimes just press the shutter button anyway and keep moving. So it's hard, isn't it? When we talk about it, I'm at danger of analyzing things too much, when in reality it's a lot of just how it feels there and then.
Yeah. It's totally like instinct and feeling. Yeah, I think that breathes new life into it. Like, it makes it more exciting, and I can definitely relate to that, because I've certainly taken a lot of pictures where it's like, okay, this like one element is really working, but it's almost like it's too easy, and that's not very fun. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and it's the difference between manufacturing and capturing, isn't it? Like you were saying before with certain compositions that you would make, like, it's easy to wait and have someone pass through a particular frame that you've essentially composed already, as opposed to actually noticing a moment in that split second and then being able to capture that. And I think there's more a sense of accomplishment doing that as well, because you have stolen that moment that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to capture, as opposed to just wait. Like I do sit on a street corner downtown, and I'll sit there for an hour and I'll capture and I'll like document people. But yeah, there is a certain kind of manufactured moment that
I think
there is less.
The moments where you're just reacting to things and capturing things spontaneously, I've noticed that, especially hanging around with other street photographers, that we all see completely different things that other people might not have even noticed. And that interests me so much, because I think, why did I hear that person say that thing over there? And why did I turn around and see that when the person right next to me didn't even react to that noise, or like just something so normal and mundane? Why did I think that the corner of that bin looked good when the person walked past me just saw it as a bin? It's like, okay, now we're really thinking differently, and we're not manufacturing these perfectly composed moments at all. We're like really just seeing how our brain reacts to stuff. And I think it doesn't have to be that complex. It can just be everyone sees different things, right? But I kind of want to dive deeper into what is it that I'm seeing and what is it that other photographers are seeing. And that comes down to personalities, like where we grew up, our beliefs on stuff. It get quite philosophical, like the things I see are going to be different things you see. Like, why is that? That's interesting.
Was that part of the mindset that you brought to putting together your first book? I just noticed the way that you were talking there, and your first book was called Learning to See. So I'm maybe putting two very very loose links together, but
the book was, I wanted to make the book to like timestamp a milestone in being so obsessed with street photography, because I thought at the back end of 2023 I've never taken so many photographs in my life, and here's some that I enjoy, here's some that I think are quite nice. Let's put a milestone on it and celebrate a little win before it gets too complicated, because I've heard many times from other photographers that are far better than me, that have spent many more years doing it, and share more wisdom, that the more you do it, the harder it gets because of your expectation and things, right? And I was so pleased with a body of work enough to make a book that I thought, I'm just going to do this and learn. So I'm learning how to make a book and how to sequence and how to compose, because I was so obsessed anyway. I thought, you know what, I'm putting so much focus into this, let's go for it and see if I can produce a book. But also at the same time, I could sell it to my audience. I could make some money. There's enough people asking. Actually, I think that's probably the bigger part. Like, enough people asked where I was like, I don't have to ignore these messages now. Like, I think, let's say 16 people DM'd me saying, why haven't you got a book I could buy? And I'm like, okay, that's one more than 15 people. Let me just put something together. But I'm pleased I did it then and not now, because when I think about my work now, like, I read that book, I flick through that book now and I'm like, why is that in there? Why did I put that? Like, I wouldn't even, I'm pleased that I did it and it's over with, because I now know loads about making a book. I now look at sequencing way differently. I just learned a ton of things. And I think the name Learning to See timestamps that period of, like, there was like 3 years where I was just so focused on street photography, and I'm pleased that I put together a little bodywork from that, because now it's like I'm less fussed about a body of work. I just want to keep shooting and keep going. So if I didn't make it last year, I don't think I'd be making it this year.
So did you already had the work shot for that book then, and you just sequenced from your back catalogue?
Yeah, I was about 70% through it, and then when I realized I was making a book, I was like, okay, let me finish off the rest of the year and see what I get.
That's interesting. I've started going the other route, and I decided to make a book before having any of the content really that I was going to be making. And I've found it so challenging, because you kind of set this expectation of specifically what you want. And I found myself every single time. I think since I decided, I think Eric, we spoke about this at some point a few months ago, but like since I decided that I was going to do this book, I was like, I've forgotten how to take photos. I've forgotten how I specifically take photographs, and everything that I produce is just like, I'm like, oh, that's not going in the book. That's not worth it. I'm not doing it. No, that's trash. And it's tough. Yeah, it's difficult. And I think that I think that it's different for different people, but I do think that for me personally, kind of going through and having some appreciation of the work that I've done already is probably not, I wouldn't say easier, but you're kinder to yourself because you're seeing stuff and you think, oh, that would look great in that book. Obviously, like you said, in hindsight, you probably would do it differently, but
I think that's why I did it, so I was able to have hindsight. As I was putting the book together, I was like, this is going to be so good in 5 years when I've got this thing that exists physically. Because if I didn't do it, then I just wouldn't. All my photographs are just online or in a hard drive. Like, I've printed a couple off, but not as many. I haven't put as much focus into it as I needed to for the book. So making the book was like a focused energy. I'm so obsessed with street photography. Let me put this into it. Let me make something from it instead of just, not that it feels pointless, but or else this last 3 years of me being so obsessed with street photography is like just going to morph into the rest of my life, because I feel like I'm always going to be obsessed with it. I think I love it. My appreciation for it's increased since making the book, but in many ways it's also gotten harder for me because the more I do it, the higher expectation. It's like, okay, now I'm too far gone now. Like making a book this year, I don't even know where I'd begin, which in many ways means I don't even have the body of work for it. But a year ago at this point, I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, I was so enthusiastic about it.
So how did your perspective shift from, so like Learning to See was a hardback book. And when you came back from New York, you released a zine based on your experience in New York. How does your mindset shift between the two? Because they're both physical representations of your work. Obviously, there is kind of, there's differences in what you produced, but they're essentially two books of your work. Aside from the time difference between when you did your first one and when you did the zine, how was your approach different?
Way less thought went into the zine, and I think the idea that it's a zine is my get out card for it, because it's not hardback, it's not as big, and the New York trip had a firm time, like date on it, like the 29th of June to the 8th of July. That's when that thing happened. So I treated it a bit like on my website, I put photographs from events or trips, and they're like a start to finish. Here's a collection of photographs from this thing that happened. I treated it like that. Like, here's some images I really enjoyed from my New York trip. And then obviously having an audience, I wouldn't have made it just for myself, I don't think, but having an audience of people that are going to buy it, it's a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, cool. People want to see these images physically. Let me slap them together. It really was that straightforward. I didn't overthink it at all. Whereas the book, I was thinking, yeah, the Learning to See book, this represents me as a street photographer, which it does. I see a book as way more important than a zine, but the zine was fun. It was just like, okay, I've made a YouTube video. If I'm going to go through all this work, I might as well make a book as well and try and make some money. So yeah, not even, I won't hide from that. That was, having an audience is encouraging, because then people want to buy it.
Photo books are artistic, and zines are poetry, because they're more truthful to the person that makes them. And I think that is for the similar kind of perspective, because it's like you don't put as much pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I just made it because
you're filling a zine with work that you enjoyed shooting, not necessarily enjoy, like have to sequence in a particular way. There is an element of it, but it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have enough photograph, like if I came back from New York and I didn't shoot anything I like, then I wouldn't have put something together. I was, as I came to like the last day of the trip, I was thinking, I hope, because I shot most of it on film, so I didn't know what I'd got, but I was like, I really hope there's some stuff here for a zine. I think that'd be really fun, because if I make a YouTube video, I can talk about the zine in the YouTube video. It goes hand in hand. And then as I started getting the scans back, I started going through them. I was like, okay, there's more than 30 images that I don't hate. I could probably put something together here. And out of those in the zine, there's probably like 5 that I think are really good. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but the rest of them are just fun. It's like it was playful. New York was playful. I wanted the zine to represent that. I think it does. I'm really pleased with how it came out, but it was really easy to make, thankfully, compared to the book.
Yeah, I bet.
The way I imagine it's like a playlist where you have like 5 like highlights. You're like, yeah, this is like the song I want to showcase, but then you've got like other songs leading up to it, and it just like makes it for an experience. Yeah.
I assume you shot both digital and film while you were at New York. I've noticed that you've been getting a lot into film over the past couple of years as well. Was there a healthy mix of the two?
I borrowed a Leica MP from Leica for the month because I did a lot of traveling in June and July, so I borrowed it for like 6 weeks or something. So there is, and I mainly for New York, but I went to Spain before that as well. So I was in Barcelona and Malaga, and then I went to New York. There wasn't even, I don't even know why. I just thought that it's summer. I can shoot Portra 400 and it looked good. Yeah, just for the process, I think shooting on an MP or an M6 or any rangefinder, I'm used to the M11 like as my digital. So I thought the MP or an M6 would be a good choice. I kind of know what I'm doing, hopefully. And the sun should be out, so it should look nice. And I'm going on holiday, so I'll treat myself. Shoot on film, and it came out. Yeah, I think 90% of the photos in the zine, New York zine film, which is nice. I'm pleased with that.
Okay, so I have a question about Leicas. You've had a pretty mixed bag of cameras over the years. I remember there was a point that you were on Canon. I think that was probably more for video. Fuji, and obviously you've shot like, Canon film cameras and stuff. And I probably know the answer because I kind of feel like it's the same for a lot of artists. It's more about the experience than anything. But like, what led you to go with the M11? Leica specifically, but like, yeah, what led you to go with that camera body? Coming from, was it the X100V that you came from?
Yeah, it's still got that. Yeah, the way I'm trying to look for it, I was down there. So I think first you have to say, are you expecting a logical answer? Because I don't have one. But
no, there is no logical answer. I just like to hear what people say.
I mean, if I didn't have, it's weird because when you talk about gear, it only matters up until the specs fulfill your logical needs. So like, I need 4K video for video work. Okay, I have a camera with 4K video. Whatever video work I do from now on for the next few years, it's going to be acceptable for whatever client needs, right? You can very quickly fulfill that need with a photo camera. You just need, 12 megapixels and a good lens and you're good to go, right? But as I used the X100V, that camera completely switched how I was taking photographs on the street. Like I was using the Canon R6 before that, and that's like a SLR setup, mirrorless, but it's bigger, bulkier, lenses are big, they're not compact. That changes the things you take photographs of. So the idea of gear doesn't matter is an absolute folly. It completely changes your approach until you use different styles, right? So if you only know one camera, then you can develop throughout the years and change your style with like freely. But actually switching camera and having novelty as a factor, that does influence the things you notice and how you hold your camera and how you interact with your environment. I do believe that. And then the Fuji X100V completely switched what I was shooting on the street. And that's when like I started to appreciate more traditional street photography, you could say. And then there is probably the fact that I did see a lot of the like the legends, you could say, or the people that really established street and documentary work, that they were using rangefinders and they were using Leicas. So I was like, that's cool. There is like, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that if Ronaldo is your favorite footballer, you're more inclined to support Ronaldo when he joins United, like there's some excitement in the brand for sure. That's what I thought about Leica. And the fact that it's a slightly unobtainable brand, I couldn't afford a Leica for so long. There's something in that, some appeal, right? Anyway, I tried the Leica Q2 And I was like, this genuinely feels amazing to use. Did the images I get from that improve from the images in the X100V? No. But did I improve as a photographer? Yes. So there's like the year that I started shooting on the Q2, I took more photographs than ever before. Now, I don't know if it's like correlation and causation where I was just shooting more, so therefore I feel like my work got better. Or was I shooting more because I just loved using the camera as well, right? So the Q2 had an influence on what I was shooting for sure. And then using the Q2, I'm thinking, well, I might as well just go for the full thing here and just get an M body, because I feel like if I have an M body, I won't need anything else after that. And now I'm like 9 months into having the M11, and it's just a dream to shoot with. So I could say, yeah, like the quality is great. It simplifies the process. I don't know. It helps me shoot, but it's just a camera like everything else. But I do actually want to pick it up, and I think that's important. I do actually want to go outside and use it.
That's kind of the idea that I have, and I think that it's odd, isn't it? Because Leica is sometimes it's a controversial brand, or it's a controversial camera to have for some people.
It's because of the cost. It's because of the cost. There's nothing. There's no. It produces nice files. It's whatever it is. But like, I could show you a Canon file or a Fuji file or a Nikon file. That doesn't matter at all. It's because it's expensive and the brand, many people can't buy it. So it's like it's actually more political than anything else. In the UK, you have a class system. The Leica brand, I don't know how to describe it, but it has that.
It's an upper class camera.
It has that impact. Yeah. So even if you're not upper class and you just worked for it, it still has that. There are still, unfortunately, many people that won't be able to buy it, and that sucks. But therefore, they're going to have an opinion on the whole. I even see people like, why do Leica users say making photographs instead of taking photographs? It's like, why are we attributing all of these negativity to the brand itself when they're just making expensive cameras? But if it wasn't super expensive, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think it's just obvious it needs to be said. It's because it's expensive and people don't like that.
The quality is worth it, though, in my opinion. Like, I've owned a Leica M6, and then I had an M10R. I wanted the M11, but the difference between 42 megapixels and 60 megapixels was like a big factor for me, because like I just don't want to pay for more storage space. But man, like the feel of the body, like the ease of like the M lens, like actually moving and getting into range, and then the quality of the viewfinder, like it all works so well. And I do like that you can interchange between the film camera, the M6 or the M7, and then the digital later on.
I think the only way to describe it easily is like, we could all drive Fords, but for some reason, some people buy Porsches. It's like, we're still going to get from A to B, but some people want to drive and have a nicer experience. Other people don't care about the experience. They just want to get to their destination. I mean, saying that, one day I hope to own a 911. I really want a Porsche 911. I'm going to say it here. I've never told anyone that. But it's a similar sort of thing. Why don't I just be satisfied with my BMW outside? Like, that car's great. But no, I want a 911. There's something about the person you have to become to achieve the thing is worth the thing. The thing is just the milestone of getting the Porsche. But what things do I have to do in my life to be able to afford a Porsche? That's the character I'm trying to build, right? I don't just want to be satisfied. I think it's nice to be able to aim higher than what you currently have. I think there's a lot of benefit in that.
I think it's all about personal experience, and that transition from one, your current camera, whatever you're using, to the one that you feel will be better for your experience. And I think that you said it yourself, Mike, that literally the only reason why people get shit for using them sometimes, or if like the brand gets shit, is because they're expensive, and they're expensive because they're probably one of the oldest camera brands out there, and they still.
And that's cool. Like that's really cool. Like, I like that. Yeah, I think that's a nice thing to be part of for sure.
It's history. You're buying history. It's not like it's not the same as kind of like paying for a brand name. It's kind of the Rolls Royce of cameras. So
sure, I feel exactly.
Yeah, I feel like there is an element there. I have the same kind of experience with Fujifilm, and I actually shifted from Fujifilm to Sony, which was a terrible idea because despite the fact that Sony's are technically, I don't know, some can say like more superior in some ways, I just could not get on board with it, and it's because it's
No, I
because of
mean,
the experience.
I picked up someone's Hasselblad the other week, the brand new Hasselblad, and like this is supposed to be like an amazing piece of kit, right? But I picked it up and took one photograph, and nothing about it felt nice. And I was like, okay, like the image here might be cool, like the super detailed 100 megapixel whatever it is, but like I picked it up and I wanted to put it down. I was like, I don't want to carry this around, and
No
that was
thanks.
like there was nothing about the brand in that case seduced me. Whereas even if the Leica brand has seduced me as a user and a customer, I'm happy about it. So there's
Yeah,
no complaining. Does that make sense?
yeah. Did you get feedback from people, because you've obviously got quite a large internet presence, like you're on YouTube and Instagram a lot. Did you get like feedback or responses from people when you started shooting with a Leica? I
Yeah, for
feel
sure. I
like
mean,
Yeah, I feel like people have an opinion on what you shoot with, and they kind of look at you differently if you shoot like one type of camera and then you shift over to another one or something.
I think first of all, though, there is more good people than bad people. So
Yeah,
so I can talk about some negative comments in a moment, and there's some funny ones I'll mention. But like, there is way more of the good guys out there commenting nice things and supporting the videos, and like especially my audience. I don't know how I've managed this, but they seem very genuine, and the people that message me and comment on my Instagram and comment on YouTube, I actually love the engagement with the people that watch my videos. I find I'm very lucky with that. However, of course, I mean, I had a comment like 2 days ago saying you mentioned a $9,000 camera and a $5,000 lens and a $3,000 this trust fund ? Now,
I
I mean,
saw that. I
I
saw that on
wish
Instagram.
I
Yeah,
wish I had a trust fund. That'd be lovely. I'd buy whatever I wanted. And I mean, you just kill them with kindness and say, no, unfortunately, it's just 10,000 hours of work. Have a great day. Like, I don't want to be too arrogant with it, but there is a point where it's like, if we were talking in real life, I wouldn't carry on this conversation. We would just like, or even to be honest, if we were talking in real life, the conversation would go completely different. Like, you wouldn't say things like that. So I always think, social media or the comment section doesn't encourage people to be themselves. It just encourages people to perform. So I always remember that, like, if someone comments, that's probably not them truly. They're probably not like that. It's just because they have the ability to write whatever they can because the keyboard's in front of them. So, but with all negative opinions, with every a negative opinion, there's 100 brilliant comments online. So it doesn't really affect me in that way. It's kind of fun.
When I had my Leica, like, if I'm in person, like, I'm proud of that camera, like, especially around other photographers, like, it's just such a fantastic camera. Like, you cannot be excited about it, but I definitely understand like the class issue with it. But it's like, man, if you just had an opportunity to like shoot with this camera, I think there's an air of jealousy, but it's like, man, just give it a shot. Like, if you want to shoot with this camera, like, find a way, and I appreciate that that's your attitude about it too.
I find it great because I've got a couple of friends that are not interested in camera gear at all, but they love street photography, and I love how not opinionated they are about it. They just don't care. Not in like I think like as a bad company. They're like, don't even know what model camera I've got. And I admire that completely nonchalant attitude because they just want to focus on taking pictures. Now, I see it as like, if you're obsessed with one thing and you're obsessed with another thing, but those two things are really closely aligned, then you're going to like them both. So I love tech. I also love photography. So I think it's great to like camera gear. I don't think there's any, there shouldn't be any guilt in photographers talking about camera gear because I find it fascinating. Especially like the Leica brand and the rangefinders and film cameras. There's so much to learn about it, and I don't know everything. I'm picking up stuff all the time, but I find it refreshing when I speak to a photographer that doesn't even know what camera they're using. They're like, I don't know, I'm just out here to take photographs. I'm like, that's cool. It's a shame that you're not interested in the thing, but yeah.
It is actually refreshing because they're there purely for the experience and nothing more. And I think that's a really good thing. I've never actually met anyone that's just can be like, I don't know what that is, but but still like taking photos.
I can think I think of like 3 people now, like London street photographers that just couldn't care less what they use. I mean, as long as it works, right? But they just don't care. They're using a Fujifilm camera that's 10 years old, and they're like, yeah, but it still works a little bit, so I'm fine. I'm like, okay.
I was really like that when I first bought the X100V, and after a while, especially with like the hype of that camera, there was a period of time where I was kind of apprehensive about actually going out to take photos with it, because it made me feel like I would meet up with with a bunch of photographers. I'd be there with the X100V, and I'd be like, they're just like, it's not serious about photography. He's got an X100V. He's got a hype camera or something like that. Because I saw things like that on the internet, like so much flack that people would get because they're just like, it's overhyped. And honestly, I do 100% agree. I think the X100 cameras are great, but they are overhyped. I think especially the X106, because everyone I saw was selling their V to get the 6, and it's like, it's an improvement, sure, but it's not going to revolutionize the way.
I actually thought the V was better. I think because I thought the V was the perfect camera, and as soon as you technically improve it, the experience wasn't quite the same. Like I literally found my autofocus was worse. The camera was heavier and the battery died quicker. So even though the software was better, it was producing nicer results. I didn't want to use it. So I had it for a week on loan from Fujifilm. They just gave it to me. And I was like, I don't want to buy this. I don't think, I think my V is quicker in some ways. It's like you tinker with it too much and it loses what made it special. I don't know. I haven't got the science to tell you why that's the case, but it felt heavier. The autofocus was worse and the battery didn't last as long. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll just use the V. So that was my experience.
They had 5 years to improve the autofocus on that camera, and I was really surprised to read that
it was weird. It was like focusing. Like I had the single point focus, but it would pick up the thing in the background instead of the thing that entered the foreground in the middle of the frame. And I explained this to one of my friends, James Parsons, who's also a fellow street photographer, and he had the exact same experience. And he's actually still got his X106, but he's given it to someone else to use because they didn't have a camera or something. And he's not even asked for it back yet. It's been like 6 months. He doesn't. Not that I'm just outing James Parsons here as someone who's careless about his gear. I don't mean like that, but he's like not bothered about receiving it back because he's got the X100V and he's like, yeah, cool. That's how little he cares about the 6 because it's just not that. Yeah, it's not that good.
It's so wild that there's such a demand for that camera because like I signed up for the wait list and I'm always like, I want the opportunity to buy it if it presents itself, but there's like so many people that want this camera, but everybody that has it and every review that I've read has said that it's not that great. So it's so interesting that,
I mean, it's fine, right? But if we're comparing it to the hype of the X100V, it was never going to live up to it. So
sure,
it's a camera and it's fine.
Also, with the X106, they tried to brand it as a hybrid camera. It's like it's not.
Yeah, I don't. No one's going to want to use that for video. It's a weird one, isn't it?
No, exactly.
It's like very cumbersome to do that to shoot nice video with. Weird.
That kind of camera, yeah.
I have another question for you about your, and I hesitate to use the term because I really don't like it, but you create a lot of content online sharing your process. And I think going back to what you were saying about the community that you have is very, positive, and you don't really get a lot of assholes in your community. And I think that's because of how transparent and open you are with your process and the way that you do things and tips and tricks and your kind of own creative journey. But you put a lot of that you write a lot about your process. You don't just document through photo. You don't just do YouTube as well. I was going to simply just go, why? But that doesn't sound very very positive. But like, what inspires you to write about it? Because you've been doing blogs for a couple of years. I'm not sure how long you've been doing the newsletter, maybe similar time or something. But
Yeah.
And as someone who has written and done blogs and done newsletters in the past, it's a discipline. And it has to be something, even if you're passionate about the subject, the discipline of actually writing and consistently sharing is tough to keep up. What inspires you to continue that practice?
Thank you for noticing that I write a lot, because everything I do except for going outside to take photographs starts with me writing. And it's not that I need attention for it, but it's I think about it all. I do so much writing that sometimes that's not the end result. Normally the writing turns into a script that turns into a video, right? So, and the video gets views, but not the script. But I reuse the script for blogs and stuff, so that I do put it out there. But basically writing things down does help with mental clarity. I think it's a good way of emptying the bin on your desktop computer. If you just store all this information without writing anything down, you either forget things or it doesn't. The idea of articulating something, the process of articulating something, improves your thinking further on it. You're able to dissect your own ideas. If it's not written down, you've only got surface level. This is what I think. I'm sure some people's brains operate a lot differently, but I started the newsletter maybe 2 years ago now. Maybe, I don't know, 18 months ago. And that was because I had ideas that were like half scripts for YouTube videos or a conversation with a friend, and they never went anywhere. They never became anything useful. And I used Notion a lot, the note-taking app. And I had enough like gibberish written down that wasn't good enough for a YouTube video that I thought, okay, I'm going to share this anyway. I think there's a good amount of accountability that happens when you share stuff. And I'm not encouraging people or anyone to just make content for the sake of it. But if you do document what you're thinking, other people can relate to it. So it's quite straightforward. I can't remember where I heard this, but a long time ago, I heard someone say you need to document, not create. So instead of writing the perfect script for a video, I just dribble on a keyboard and see what my brain says. And it turns out that a lot of other people agree or disagree. And even if they disagree, it's engaging conversation anyway. So I'd like to make it really straightforward and obvious. Like to make a good YouTube video, I have to write the script for it, or else I will just waffle on camera. So that was the main thing. I started writing my thoughts about street photography because I wanted to explain what I was thinking. But then I kept writing things down that never became YouTube videos. And I thought, I need to get this out there somehow. So I started a newsletter, which is more playful and like, here's what I'm thinking this week. I hope you like this. But I can't emphasize how helpful writing is. And I write a little bit with a pen and paper. Every now and then I've got a notebook that might write some stuff down, but it's mainly on Notion, whatever note-taking app you decide to use. But my Notion's full of so much crap. But I think it's better for it to be in Notion than it is to be nowhere. I think you learn more about yourself by writing. A bit like photography, you learn a lot about yourself by understanding what photographs you take and how it's a creative expression. And I think writing is, if you told me this at school, I would have told you to go away politely. But as an adult, writing is the start of everything I do. It's the start of every video, the start of every week, the start of my routine. Yeah, I can't emphasize how helpful it's been over the years.
It's interesting how you go from not wanting to do it to like seeing the value in it. I like the idea of there's an idea and then you pull that thread and you take that thread into a journal or a notes app, and then it can be so many other things. But the accountability that you talked about with the newsletter is right on. It just keeps you on track.
People should share more stuff. And I think, if you don't want to, you don't want to. But if you share more things, opportunities come your way, doors are opened. So I can my recent video, I just waffled on about a 28mm lens, but the amount of people that sent me a message saying they can resonate or relate, or they never thought of it like that, or they completely disagree, I think it's great. This is conversation about what we all love, which is street photography and camera gear. and we're just like adding fuel to it. And I think if more people did that, I think they would reap more rewards from it. But I do appreciate the fact that sharing things online is quite a vulnerable thing to do.
It adds to the canon of the 28 millimeter. Like people will look back, like 10 years from now, or they'll look up an article or a video and they'll be like, oh, here's Mike's take on the 28 millimeter.
Yeah. And I'm just a normal
opinion.
guy. I'm just like everyone else. I'm just a normal person. But the fact that I've written my thoughts down and published it means something. My thoughts are no more important than your thoughts, but I've decided to articulate it and you didn't. So therefore we're not in the same boat now. Whether it's someone might be able to articulate that video way better than me, but unfortunately they didn't write it down. So therefore they didn't get a Squarespace sponsorship, and no one else is relating to it. And all the doors that I haven't got 100,000 subscribers because I deserve 100,000 subscribers because what I'm saying is important. It's just I'm saying it and someone else isn't. It's really straightforward.
And you were consistent with it, and you stuck with it. And
sure.
You carried on doing it. I think that's an important thing as well. I also have a YouTube channel, but I do not have 100,000 subscribers because I did 3 videos and I thought, fuck this.
There are better photographers with wiser words to say, but unfortunately they're not writing it down and sharing it. So
that's subjective, but yeah, I think it takes discipline, and it takes, as you said, like putting things out on the internet is vulnerable, and I think that it takes a lot to do that. And plus, like you put the newsletter out weekly, which takes a lot of discipline as well. You have to actually kind of schedule this stuff, and it's impressive. So do you start with the newsletter and then form ideas for your YouTube videos and stuff from that? Or is the newsletter formed from your just kind of, dumping your thoughts out into Notion, and then the YouTube is a separate entity?
I think YouTube is treated probably very differently because I have to kind of vet it to see if it would be a good enough video. Can I actually make a title and thumbnail out of this, or is this complete gibberish? So the YouTube video has way more intention behind it, but a lot of my newsletter thoughts are just notes from weeks that I've been dropping stuff in Notion, and then if something substantial enough comes from it, then I'll share it in the newsletter. But sometimes the newsletter is really simple, and it's just I've been last week I was in Lake Garda, so I just shared some photos from Lake Garda. So there was no complex writing that needed to come from that. It was just, here's some stuff I've been doing, just to probably keep up the consistency. I don't expect everything I write down to be worth reading for anyone, but if I just do it anyway, then that means I've got the ball rolling for next week. It's a lot about making it easy for yourself. If I waited to publish the newsletter until I had something interesting to say, then I probably wouldn't publish it ever. So it's this idea of just start now and improve later. I think that's a YouTube taught me that as well, because there's never a perfect YouTube video, and then therefore you'll never grow the perfect audience. So just do it now and then figure it out next week. So it's just a continual learning process.
Yeah, I come from a tech background, and we were always told build then iterate. And it's the same kind of mentality.
It's the same.
Get something out and then you can improve as you go along.
I think learning from what you put out is also so useful. I love the fact that I've got all these iterations of my YouTube videos, because whether I think they're cringy or not, from when I look back on the years, I'm like, well, I'm pleased I put some energy into something and I'm learning from it. Otherwise, you never get to see that. I've got a physical record, a digital record of my learnings about photography.
Yeah, it goes back to documentation, where if anything, if it's not making impact, at least it's a documented record of
it's fun
where you were at that time. Yeah, it's enjoyable too.
Creative journal.
Yeah,
literally.
I think that's something we've done with Pastiche too. Is and that's been mostly your philosophy, Tom, is just to do it and make it, and we'll grow. In time.
I think I learned that the hard way, though, because I spent the first 2 years just doing it myself, and I'm was a very self-deprecating artist, and anyone would be able to see from my presence on the internet, because it's vastly inconsistent, and I could hammer down posts on Instagram for a good 30 days and then no one will see me for 6 months, because I would just be like, I'm sick of this. I'm not putting out anything that I enjoyed. And I think I kind of fed that into the early days of the magazine as well. I think it was since like you joined, Eric, and then, Hannah and Jordan joined, we kind of had some differing perspectives, and it was good to realize that people just want to engage. People just want to be part of any kind of creative process. It doesn't have to be polished. It just has to be.
I actually think if it is polished, it's less approachable and less relatable, and it's less human-like. The more, not that I think we should just waffle online, but the more I just share ad hoc thoughts about photography, the more people tag along and want to listen to it next week as well. It's like
exactly
my recent video last week on the 28mm isn't profound at all. I'm just kind of waffling on about what I've been thinking about recently, but there's enough people that can relate and resonate, and it's engaging. I'm actually surprised that video didn't flop and completely die, and it's actually getting more than 1,000 views, because I didn't think anything of it at the time. But
as you said earlier, what you don't see, someone else does. So it's
a very good point.
So
you will never know if you don't put it out there, right?
Exactly. I have one last question, actually.
Go for it.
And it's a two-parter. One, have you ever done any street photography in Colchester? Two, if not, are you going to, for my benefit, because I've been homesick for a while?
No, I don't think I have, but I have been up there a couple of times. I feel like I might have done a day or two, I can't remember anything substantial that happened. But I can make the effort for you.
I was never a photographer when I was back in the UK, so I never actually experienced doing any street photography back home. But now I want to go back home.
I'll make the effort for you, Tom. I'll do it.
It'll be nice to see the hometown through your lens. Actually, that would be really interesting as well, because I can think about going back home and taking my photos. I know where I would go. I know the routes that I would take. So it would actually be interesting to see from your perspective. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate just kind of having a conversation and talking about your processes and just shooting the shit about. I like nerding out about cameras, but I kind of feel like sometimes just doing a podcast about that might be a bit much. So
you say that, but back to what I said earlier, though, there will be other people that like it a bit too much as well. So
audience,
there'll be an audience of people that gravitate to that.
Absolutely.
And there will be plenty of people that don't care.
Yeah, no, for sure. Are you traveling again soon, or are you staying put for the time being and taking a rest?
I think I'm staying put, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, I appreciate your time nonetheless. And this will be going out to our readers in the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to edit and hear it back.
Yeah, that was fun.
I've thoroughly enjoyed
that
this
a lot. It was nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, likewise. I look forward to seeing how I completely disagree with everything I've said in the next 3 years, and then we have another conversation, and it's even more interesting because this is an ever growing thought process.
I'm going to put it in the calendar for 3 years' time. I'm just going to listen to it back, and I'm just going to call you out on the internet, just like I'm going to tag your friend James Parsons about his
being negligent with his camera equipment.
Just doesn't like his cameras that much. He just hands them out to people. Yeah, this is just going to be a podcast of just calling people out. Anyone else that we want to call out, Eric, if there's anyone you want to tag?
Don't get me started. It might be in a whole nother episode.
Controversial. Right, well, I'm going to stop the recording here anyway. And